Welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout. Here's your host, MYS Music Director, Raul Gomez.
Hello, everybody. That intro gets me pumped every time. It's so exciting and I love it so much. So I want to thank again the folks who created it. Felipe and Jose Julian Araya, video, Sam Mori for voiceover, and music by MYS alum Griffin Barbieri. How's everybody doing? Oh man, so my weekends generally are Sundays and Mondays because at MYS we have rehearsals most Saturdays. So my working days are from Tuesdays to Saturdays. And even though currently we're not having physical rehearsals, I like to keep my work days, in that range, which means that today for me, Tuesday, is the day that I come back to everything that has to do with work and with MYS. And I'm so excited to start a new week. This coming Saturday at MYS will be the first Saturday that we have programs or rehearsals online for all of our 500 plus students and 14 ensembles. We've been working on figuring out what that's going to look like, and this coming Saturday will be the first time that we do this. And this is, originally we had 2 Saturdays off scheduled for spring break, March 21st and 28th. And so this coming Saturday would have been our first Saturday after spring break, and we're excited to have programs for all MYS ensembles. And if you're an MYS student, you're going to be getting an email with the schedule for programs on Saturday and with an explanation of how it's all going to work. So that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to start a new week. And of course, another big reason is these streams, these broadcasts. And I look forward to them every single day. I start work in the morning here, in my home studio. And I just look forward to 4 p.m. all day because I get to talk to amazing people. And many of you tune in and watch. And it's been really heartwarming to see the response. And we've gotten some, emails with feedback and how many of you are enjoying these broadcasts, and it's a source of joy in uncertain times. So a few things before we bring in the amazing Charles Noble, who is our guest today, starting at 4:10. We'll call him on Skype. So first of all, I want to invite everybody to subscribe. And it's funny because now I sound like, like all of those people you watch on YouTube asking you to subscribe. But really, please do it. Just click on that button and then click on the bell that's next to it so that when we go on the air, you actually get a notification that we're on the air. And our goal for this week is 350 subscribers. And if you look at the lower corner there of the screen towards the bottom right, we are at 314. So I would love to see that number go up to 350 by the end of this week. And whenever somebody subscribes, there's a funny animation that happens on the screen. So that's also kind of fun. So help us get to 350. If you've already subscribed, you can send a link to our YouTube channel to your contacts and your friends. Let's get that number up. Also, I am excited to talk to you guys about the MYS online auction coming up on Friday. So, as many of you know, performing arts organizations depend on the generosity of many people who support these organizations. And of course, there's funding that comes from grants and from ticket sales, but a lot of it comes from you guys. And as I'm sure you also know, with the current public health crisis and all of the cancellations, many arts organizations are suffering. And fundraising galas and events and concerts and so many things have been canceled. So now more than ever, it's important that all of you support the organizations that matter to you. And here in Portland, there are so many wonderful organizations, and there's such a great ecosystem of performing arts organizations, and there's so much good stuff going on. So, I encourage everybody to support those organizations that mean something to you and that bring something good to your life. In the case of MYS, our big fundraising event every year is our gala, and originally this gala was going to happen this coming Friday, April 3rd. And what we have decided to do, and this is thanks to the amazing leadership of our board of directors and our executive director Diana Scoggins, we're going to have an online auction on Friday, and it's going to be live streamed. It's not gonna be me doing it. We have an amazing partner who's gonna be running the live auction, and it's gonna happen live, and it's going to happen after this show on Friday. So you can watch this show this Friday. You can hang out with all of us, and then you can go to the link to go to the auction. And if you are subscribed to the MYS mailing list, you probably got this email that's right here on the screen, and this is an invitation to our online auction. And if you didn't get this email, let me know and write on the comments, and I'll send it to you. And this has a link to the auction, and there are a bunch of great items that you can use, some of them right away, some of them when things go back to normal, because things will go back to normal. So let me know if you didn't get this email, and I will send you a link. And I also want to highlight this item right here. It says Maestro's Handmade Bench. So some of you know that I am an amateur woodworker. I have been learning woodworking for the last couple of years, maybe. I was always interested in working with wood, but I never really, years ago when I was in New Orleans, I remember I tried to make a desk out of plywood and 2x4s, and I didn't even know how that thing was even not just collapsing all over the floor, because I really had no idea what I was doing. I created something that allowed me to work at it, but I really had no idea what I was doing. And then a couple of years ago, I found a channel on YouTube called Woodworking for Mere Mortals by Steve Ramsey, and I just started watching him, and he has a really welcoming approach, and I decided to start getting into it and start learning. So I'm going to show you a few pictures here. Over the last couple of years, I've been just acquiring one tool at a time, and little by little just creating a sort of like shop in the back of the house. So you can see my table saw and my router table there, and just it's basic tools, but they have allowed me to learn a lot, and I love the time that I get to spend in the shop. It's not a lot, but I do enjoy doing that. And there's just it's just this satisfaction, of doing something creative and turning something like these pieces of wood from a pallet into something that's useful. So it's been a really fun journey for me personally. And at this auction, we're going to auction off a bench that I will make for you, for the person who wins this bid. And this bench, I made one for the gala last year, the MYS gala. And so here, I guess this is me putting it together, and it's clamped and drying, and then just lots of sanding. There's a lot of sanding that needs to happen, and eventually you end up with something that looks like this bench right here. Okay, so I'm excited about this item because I get to make it, and it's a way to support MYS. So there you have it. If you didn't get this email, let me know, and I will send it to you. I will send this email to you. Okay, so there's that. In addition to this, also I want to remind you that we have a bunch of items in the MYS shop. Just go to that website there, and you can get your tote bag and all that cool MYS merch that when we go back to rehearsals, everybody, I hope to see many of you wearing these t-shirts and the tote bag and all of that. I know I will be. So, okay. And that's it. So now I get to talk about Charles. And we're going to call him in a couple of minutes. There you go. Okay, so I came to Portland in 2016 in the summer, to start my job with MYS in the fall of 2016 with my wife Sarah and our dogs, Hartley and Jasmine. And, soon after we got here and I started going to Oregon Symphony concerts, I was in awe of the Oregon Symphony. And of course, it's a very well-known orchestra around the country and around the world. I knew about the Oregon Symphony. I knew people who are Oregon Symphony musicians, but really to be in this community and to start going to Oregon Symphony concerts regularly opened my eyes to what an extraordinary ensemble this is. Just what a fantastic collective of true collaborators and musicians, and just the versatility of this orchestra, just how good they sound playing so many different kinds of music. It's a real honor that this orchestra is here for us. And many Oregon Symphony musicians coach MYS students on sectional. So I got to know many of them over time, and one of them is Charles. Charles is the assistant principal viola with the Oregon Symphony. He's an amazing musician with a really wonderful and positive presence on stage and off. And I admire many things about Charles, and one of them is that in addition to his musical pursuits and his talents, he has a blog that I follow, Noble Viola, and I'll ask him about that blog so he can share with all of you. And he has a very open and creative mind with things that are not necessarily within music, but have to do also with communicating what's important to him, and a lot of that work he does on his blog. And well, I see that it's 4:13. Conductors, we talk a lot, and I just get excited. So let's bring Charles in, and we'll chat with him. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about what he has been up to these days. Okay. So as always, crossing fingers that the Skype gods smile upon us. And here we go. Hey, Charles.
Hello.
There you are. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you, Raul?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you. Now let me put you up on the screen, and let's hope that. And there you are, magic.
Hello,
Good.
everyone.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for taking the time to do this. How's it
Sure.
going?
It's going good. I do have a lot of extra free time now.
Right,
So,
right, right,
you
right.
know, getting into trying to get into some of the tech aspects, like you really are wholeheartedly embracing the YouTube world and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, just trying to keep practicing and learn how to do some new stuff. And yeah, I always think if only I had a big expanse of time where I didn't have any conflicts, nothing going on, and now I got it, and now I just don't know what to do with it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, in a way, we're all kind of forced to have to learn new things and improvise and find different ways to sort of exercise our creativity. But this is not really new to you. I mean, you've been exploring other areas of, communication for some time. And I was telling everybody about your blog. But before we talk about that, would you mind just sharing with everybody, and especially those of you who might not be familiar with you and your work, just, how long you've been in Portland and your work with the symphony, and you also perform with chamber ensembles. So will you give us an overview of what you have been up to for the last maybe 20 years, I believe?
Yeah, 25 actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved to Portland in 1995 when I got the job with the Oregon Symphony, and been doing that ever since as the second chair viola. And um, I've I've had string quartets on and off pretty much the whole time. I had a really serious group called the Ethos Quartet that we came really close to getting management, and we thought about maybe quitting our jobs and trying to make a go of it. And in the end, it didn't quite work out, but it was an amazing, fun thing to do. And these days, I'm playing with the Pyxis Quartet, which is a new music quartet that's part of 45th Parallel Universe, and the Arnica Quartet, which is sort of the fun let's play stuff that we've always wanted to play, that no matter what era it's from.
Yeah.
So lots of things going on, and I've got enough going on usually. So this vacuum is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me ask you something. In the Oregon Symphony, it seems to me that many musicians, in addition to their, you know, very busy schedule with the symphony, I mean, there's a lot of chamber music going on or playing with new music collectives. Is that something that you see in a lot of members of the orchestra?
Yeah, quite a few people are. I mean, there's always a range. There's some people that the only thing they do is they play in the orchestra. They might not teach very much or do chamber music, but the orchestra, that's their sole focus, and that's great. That works really well for them. Then there's people that have an incredible number of students, like Clarice Atchison has a ton of students. Catherine Gray, when she was in the symphony, she had an amazing studio as well. So there's people where they teach almost as much as they work in the orchestra. And then the Brian Quincy viola player has a wonderful studio. And then there's other people that where like me where it's pretty much all performance centered. It just kind of ended up that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, lots of things going on. I think it's wonderful. You know, if you go to the Berlin Philharmonic's website, and they have a list of all the chamber ensembles that are comprised of that, and there are over 30 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, of all, and there are people that are in more than one. And I think it's a tremendous, it's a wonderful thing to do. And it's also, I mean, orchestral playing really should be chamber music. And with
Yes.
those really incredible orchestras, they need a conductor from time to time, but the thing I think of is there was the Lucerne Festival Orchestra that Claudio Abbado conducted for years and years and years, and then he passed away, and they played the last movement of Mahler 3 with no conductor, and it was just gorgeous, beautiful,
Yeah.
and heartfelt. And but so they're all, especially that orchestra, they're from quartets and major orchestras and all that, and they can do everything. But back to my point, the chamber music really is the basis of everything, and I feel like it really makes me think about the way I play in ways that nothing else does because I'm solely responsible for my part. Um, I can hear myself whether I want to or not. Whereas sometimes in the orchestra, you can just kind of tone it down a little bit and kind of go into the sound of the section.
Right, right.
And and if you do that all the time, you kind of lose track of what do I actually sound like. And then if you record yourself after a long period of that, you go, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I can't believe it. So for me, chamber music is sort of like an amazing prescription that can it's right in between like solo playing and orchestra playing because I find solo playing I don't do much of it and it's really nerve wracking for me because I'm out of practice doing it. Um, and then it's just me and I'm not really interacting with somebody else. I'm not playing off of somebody else if it's just me by myself. And with a pianist, of course, that works.
yeah,
But yeah, it's just I don't know. Chamber music's really where it's at, and I think everybody I know that I really respect as an orchestral musician is also really heavily involved in chamber music.
yeah.
It's just a great joy of my life.
Oh man, and I mean, to talk about that in the times of social distancing is almost painful, right? Because you crave that. You crave that interaction with other musicians, and yes, to we talk about this in rehearsal often at MYS. How a large orchestra should function like a large chamber ensemble, and I think to me, one of the things that you know often doesn't translate from chamber to orchestra, and that you sort of sometimes need to take the active step of bringing that over from one to the other is just sort of the sense of ownership of the music. When you're playing in a quartet, you're closer to that center and to really, it's just the four of you. Often in rehearsal, you have your part and you have a score next to you, right? So just to bring that attitude from chamber music to orchestra can be so enriching. So I absolutely agree with you, and it's also one of my favorite things about the Oregon Symphony that so many of you guys are also doing chamber music. Look, before I forget, because I always get too excited and we just like talk and talk. Let's do your two truths and a lie.
Okay.
Okay, so you send those to me early, and for everybody watching, the way this works is Charles is going to read three statements, and one of them is a lie. And your job is to vote on the comments for which one of the three statements you believe is the lie. And we're going to reveal that towards the end of our time together. Okay, so Charles, whenever you're ready, let's hear statement A.
Okay. I have met two presidents of the United States.
Okay, so I just put that up on the screen. That's A. Let's hear B.
B is I have ridden my bike over 100 miles in one ride.
Okay, that's up on the screen now. And let's hear statement C.
My first choice of a musical instrument was the trumpet.
Okay, there you have it. So everybody, you can vote now. You can vote later. Many of you know Charles, and I know Stephanie's watching, so she probably shouldn't vote.
Yeah, don't vote, Steph.
Stephanie is Charles' wife, and she commented a little bit earlier on the stream. Um, so yeah, so everybody else, here are your three choices. I will share that I play a little trumpet, Charles, but really it's very limited. I kind of started learning just to understand brass instruments a little bit better. But don't let's. I don't want you to give anything away. So let's move on for the time being. Um,
Okay,
can we talk about your blog a little bit?
sure.
So the tagline for your blog is music from every angle. So will you share
Right.
about your approach and your blog in general?
Okay. Um, so it's called Noble Viola, and it's nobleviola.com. Um, it just became, I don't even know how long ago I started it now, well over 10 years ago, back when blogs were actually a thing. Um, I was the YouTuber of my time, I think, you know.
Okay.
Um, but I just felt like at that point, there wasn't really a lot of insight into what, you know, you go to the orchestra and you see people playing and they're just, you know, there's 70, 80 of them down there and they're kind of small unless you have really close up seats and they're just part of this giant organism and there's not you don't really get to know them very well. And so I guess my first impulse was, and plus I play the viola, so it's not like the instrument that people gravitate to in a lot of senses because you're right in the middle of everything. You seldom have the lead voice. You know, it's not like the trumpet or the flute or you know the violin, first violin especially, or the cello, which gets all the great tunes.
Right, right.
Um, and so I guess just came out of a desire to sort of go, okay, here's what it's like to be in an orchestra. Nobody really talks about it that much, unless they retire and write a tell-all book and everybody hates them. But I wanted to come at it from, you know, sort of a little bit of an educational standpoint, but also it was kind of a form of therapy for me,
Mm.
you know, kind of talking about things that would bother me or things that I really enjoyed or commenting on what was happening with other orchestras if they were having problems or great successes or whatever it might be. And it kind of evolved. I took a couple of auditions where I blogged my progress through some auditions and as just kind of a laying it all out there and kind of because people, you know, people are secretive, especially when you're in an orchestra. They don't want to I'm going to take this audition, and then everybody's like, "How'd it go? How'd it go?" You know, and it wasn't great, you know, and then you just feel bad, and nobody feels good about it. But it's kind of a secretive thing in a lot of cases. So I thought that would be a good thing to do, just kind of chronicle that because it's sort of a process that's very mysterious and nobody knows much about it. And I don't know. I think ultimately it's kind of been mostly like a therapeutic thing for me, just writing about this, my life in music, which is pretty all consuming, and kind of sharing it with people. Because every time I meet with patrons, especially with the orchestra, um, they're always very interested in what we as individuals are up to, and they feel really connected to the whole organization if they kind of get a chance to see what our lives are like. Um, and so I guess ultimately that's kind of what it's been over the years, and it's come and gone. The last few years, I didn't write a whole lot, and then ever since kind of this big catastrophe has befallen, you know, the whole world, and affects nonprofits and arts organizations so deeply, it kind of felt like a good time to sort of I know there are a certain number of people that read it. I don't really know how many, although I run into people everywhere that say, "Oh, you're that blog guy."
Ha!
And I'm like, "What? Really?
Oh,
I thought
that's
there were
cool.
like 10 people reading this." But no, it's pretty amazing. So I thought here's an opportunity to try to, you know, help. And so I wrote, I guess maybe the day after we announced that we were cutting almost 2 months out of the season because of the restrictions on gatherings. And I wrote an article called I'm Scared and just kind of laid it all down. You know, here's why I'm worried, and here's what we're facing as an organization, and everybody's facing it. Um, and then a few days after that, I wrote the open letter to my elected officials
Yes, yes.
as kind of and because I had had people asking me, you write well better than I can, so would you write a sample letter and kind of then give us all the links to people, and then they could take it and make it their own thing, and that's still there. So it seems like headway is being made, but right now there's so much going on that it's, you know, we're pretty far down the food chain. There are people and organizations that need the money
Yeah.
far more than we do right now, like hospitals and first responders and things like that, and people that are really in need. We'll be okay for a while, but you know, it's it's tough.
Yeah, but I think it's so important right now to, you know, talk about these things out loud, and in your case, through this specific platform that is your blog, um, it's delicate because, like you're saying, I mean, right now there's so much need for so many things, right? And we all need to do our part and follow, the directives, and we all have a common goal, which is to get through this as quickly as we possibly can. We all want to go back to normal, and um, the people who are at the front lines of this are heroes. I mean, it's no less than heroism, to really be, confronting this up front. Medical workers, and the, that whole network of people. Um, but I find that one of the reasons why specifically what you're writing about is important is because, I mean, the arts can also serve as a as refuge for many, and to give people joy and hope. And I admire you for writing about all of this, and by being an active voice, advocating for the whole community of artists here in Portland, but also everywhere else. Um, so thank you for that.
Sure, you're welcome.
And look, I was looking at your bio earlier,
Hmm.
and there's something I wanted to talk about with you. And over the course of your education, I mean, you went to three different institutions or universities, and you had different viola teachers over
Hmm.
time, and of course, also I'm sure when you before college, high school and all of that, you also had your teachers. So would you talk about, as a music student growing up, in your case, your relationship with your instrument teacher, and what sort of lessons did you learn from them, uh, musically, but also outside of music? Because
Hmm.
all of our young musicians at MYS, or at least the older students, have private teachers, so they have that relationship. So I'm curious as to how those relationships with your different teachers played out over time.
Well, I'll go back to high school. I had a teacher named Bill Watson, who was at the time the principal violist of the Tacoma Symphony, and he had a big student in Puyallup, which was the town that I grew up in. And he was my first really serious private teacher I had. Before that, I had had kind of off and on, but nothing that was really intense. And so from him, I feel like at that point I was still playing violin. So from him, it was a very no pressure. I didn't study with like the big person in town that you studied with if your parents were like, my kid wants to go into a career in music, because I had no aspirations to play professionally at all, until after I was out of high school. Um, so it was relaxed, and he would share funny stories with me about things that would happen at work, at rehearsals. And I don't know, he just really gave me a very sort of affectionate, open, relaxed sort of approach, which there were some things about it that were really great. But other things where I'm like, for example, when I'm trying to play scales and thirds, where I'm like, I wish he was tougher on me with that. Um, and then when I went to college, I went to University of Puget Sound for my undergrad, and my teacher there was Joyce Romay, who is still there. And at some point in between high school and college, I had been doing um, these community music school summer chamber music things, and there came a point where there was a need for a violist and there were no violists. And so I had so just to jump back, Bill Watson, he was mostly a violist, but he taught both instruments.
Okay.
So I had gotten a little bit of a, here's how you play the viola and read the clef and all that. So I had a little bit of an introduction. So, we were doing the Mozart A major flute quartet. They needed a viola. And Joyce is like, hey, I think you can play the viola. The school has one that you can borrow for the 3 weeks. And so you're hired, do it. Um, and that's how I basically started playing the viola. And then I went and studied with her and just learned to love the viola from her. I think that was the biggest thing, just because she was a Curtis grad and had studied with Max Aronoff, who was the violist in the Curtis String Quartet, which hardly anybody knows about these days, but was truly one of the great quartets of the early part of the 20th century. And so kind of got all that lore of the golden age of the viola from this very specific viewpoint of a very pedagogically focused viewpoint. Because Max Aronoff he made his own arrangements of all the Sevchik etudes and stuff specifically for viola. And so he had that sort of approach to the instrument, as well as one of the most beautiful sounds ever. And then after that, I spent part of a year in Philadelphia studying with Jody Pasquale at the University of the Arts, with the hope that maybe I'd transfer to Curtis, but then that just didn't work out. But at the same time, I got sort of that first exposure from him because he was a pupil of Primrose and also Aronoff. So I was getting a double whammy there of kind of teacher grandfathers.
Yes.
And very tough. Like my first semester with him, I played 3-octave scales in the Telemann Concerto, and then if that was good enough, then I got to play the Handel Casadesus Concerto. Sure. And so I totally got things reworked there, and I got really my sound DNA, I think, came the most from him, because I don't think there's anybody playing before or since that had kind of this amazing sound that Di Pasquale had. There's some really incredible recordings on YouTube that you can find. And then after that, I was done kind of adrift, and I got a call from Joyce, my previous teacher, saying, well, University of Maryland has this graduate fellowship thing, and I know the orchestra conductor there really well, and somebody's visa didn't go through, so they're looking for somebody to come in. Could you go drive down there and play for them? And so I did, and that's how I ended up studying with Roberto Diaz at that point. And he was at that point principal of the National Symphony. He was probably 35 at that point when I started studying with him, maybe even younger. And that was just kind of everything came together. It was like the sound and the approach, and just being kind of a master of all aspects of viola playing, because he did chamber music and solo and orchestral, and he was a great teacher, even at that point of not having had a full college teaching studio before that, I believe. I was in his first studio that he had.
Very cool.
And so that was really remarkable. And for me, the biggest thing with him was he was and is an amazing human being. And one of the things that he drilled into me over and over again is like, don't talk badly about other people. Just if you don't have anything good to say about somebody, just don't say anything, but try to be positive and worry about yourself, not the other guy. And he did that. I could never ever find anybody that had anything bad to say about him ever, and that's pretty rare. Including when you're principal of a section, he said, my job as a principal of National Symphony is not to be their best friend. It's to make sure the section sounds really good. And so, of course, you can ruffle feathers that way, but everybody, he had it he has integrity, he's a total mensch, and he walks the walk. Yeah. And so I think that's been aside from everything else, all the amazing stuff that I learned from him, the biggest thing has been how to really comport yourself as a professional, because you're always being watched by someone,
Yeah.
and everything you do, it affects your life and it affects all the people around you. And so if you can either choose to be a positive force or a negative one. And he was very much, I'm choosing positive, and this is the way it's going to go. But really tough as a teacher too. I wouldn't say his lessons were always that positive.
Well, I think that's
I'd come out of there with my butt completely kicked,
yeah.
but
Right.
at the same time going, it's true.
Yeah.
And if it was coming from somebody else that I didn't feel had that integrity, then I might go, oh, what does he know?
Yeah.
But I was like, he really knows, and he's telling it like it is so that I can get better.
Yeah, but that's such valuable advice, about just how to carry yourself, because you take that with you everywhere, on stage and off stage, and everything is so connected. Um, and I just think it's really remarkable how, because it's the same in my case. So many valuable lessons that I learned from my teachers were not necessarily musical lessons,
Mm-hmm.
but just about everything that happens around the music.
Right.
And look, speaking of music, you're going to play a little something for us, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so why don't let's go to that if you don't mind, and
Yeah.
what you introduce what you're going to play.
Okay. So I'm going to play one of a very few pieces that Henri Vieuxtemps wrote for the viola. And this is the Capriccio, which was in a collection of pieces that were found after his death. Um, I think there were five that were for solo violin, and there was one for viola. And it's sort of subtitled an homage to Paganini. And what I love about this piece is, first of all, it's it's not a dirge. It's pretty. And I remember reading something where Isai, who the great violinist, was a student of Vieuxtemps, and he talked about in his lessons that runs of notes weren't just. He's like, they're not just runs. They have soul. They have to be. They have to make a musical line. And so I think this piece sort of brings that out perfectly. And it's in a good range for the viola, so it always sounds pretty good.
Cool.
So yeah, it's a little 3-minute piece, and people don't play it enough. People should play it anymore. Should play it more. So any of you listening that are medium advanced level, you can probably make this a year-long project. I think you could do it. It's really worth checking out.
Nice. Okay, I will put you on our performance screen, and so whenever you're ready.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everybody, get your applause emojis out for Charles Noble performing
It's a
Henry
nice little
Vieuxtemps
piece.
Capriccio for solo viola Omace Paganini in C minor. That was beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
Very.
Isn't that a lovely piece?
It's such a nice piece, but also well, first of all, and somebody commented on here live, just your sound, your timbre, it's just so wonderful. It's just so it's so rich, and I love the viola so much, and it's just what you bring into this piece is really wonderful. So thank you for playing that for us. Um, and I am gonna look it up because now I want to try my hands at it. Uh,
Yeah, and I've got to thank all my teachers for that. I mean, I think there's nothing more personal. Our sound is our voice, right?
yes, so true.
And that's what you get from all your teachers, whether they're the conductors up there going, play like this, try to get this sound, do something different, try to get more. It's, yeah, I owe all of that to all of them. That's kind of, it
Awesome. Well,
makes me emotional thinking about it.
we are very thankful that you share that with us. And Charles, let's move on into our little fun segments that we do after
Yeah.
your performance. And let's dive right into it. The first one is we want to know what you are into that's not directly related with your professional activities.
All
So
right.
will you share about that?
Well, there's a few. Okay, so I like cycling a lot. I try to ride as much as I can. In fact, sometimes I get in a little bit of trouble. Last, the very end of July, I had a bike accident and I broke my left clavicle.
Oof.
And I was out for quite a while. And that was a real adventure coming back from that. But Stephanie got me this shirt. I'm now a member of the Clavicle Club. And yeah, so yeah, what a
It says
that was a pretty
can you
amazing
go
thing.
back? Does it say involuntary life member?
Yes, exactly. Involuntary life.
Oh,
Oh my
that would
gosh.
be prof, and that's really funny.
Yeah. So I try to write a lot. Now I try to be even more careful than usual.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm really into coffee. I have an espresso machine at home, and I really geek out over that. And I'm trying to learn how to make the elaborate latte art and
Oh,
stuff with
nice.
the
Yeah.
phone.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I always pick these things that require more practice. I need to, that's why I didn't get into golf. I felt like it was too much like learning an instrument. I'm like, I spent enough time torturing myself in a practice room. Why am I going to go to a driving range and, torture myself some more with something that I'm really, really not good at?
Yeah.
So coffee bikes. We do a lot of gardening. We bought our house here in Milwaukee almost 3 years ago, and so we had a blank slate yard, and so we've been in the process of buying plants and digging up things and making paths and porches and patios and things like that. So we
Nice.
love our outdoor space, so we're really enjoying that.
And is that something
Um,
you and Stephanie do together? Your
Yeah,
house,
yeah. One of our
garden.
favorite things is to go out in the yard and when it's kind of nice and we'll
Yeah.
pick a patch of the garden bed and weed together.
Nice.
sounds really geeky, but
Hey,
it's
no,
nice. It's
well,
good quiet time, you know?
yeah. Yeah, and I think those things all complement each other really nicely. You're writing, with your like that's kind of your outdoor like physical activity, and then there's your coffee. It's like kind of indoor, like very specific, and then there's the gardening, which is something that you guys get to do together. So I think that's pretty cool. And let's hear something that maybe could be surprising or unexpected that people who even people who know you might be surprised by in our segment. Say what?
Oh man, I was supposed to think about this. Well, one thing, I'm a little bit of a pencil geek.
Okay.
I collect pencils. I have, in fact, my prized Christmas present this last year was Stephanie got me this subscription to these Blackwing pencils, and they have these limited edition pencils that are based on some event or historical thing, and they have a whole story in there. Like this is about surfing, and it's got the whole coast of California on the side of the pencil, and a big
Whoa.
story on the inside. There's a thing that comes with it, and it comes with like a sealed glass container with a archival pencil in it, so you don't get it all messed up, you know.
I think that's very so. I think that's very cool. Is this like are these collectibles or do you also like use them
I
or
guess they could, some people really get serious about, collecting them and you don't open the box and stuff like that. But I use them. These I love these Blackwing pencils because they're really good for marking music.
yeah, I was
I
about to
went, there was
ask.
an orchestra librarian that told me about them at one point, and I thought, okay, I'll check these out. And then all of a sudden, they started doing these sort of limited edition pencils, and it's like, why does it have to be utilitarian? You know,
I'm
it,
making a
it
note about
looks
this.
cool and it's fun, and yeah. So I'm not the only one in the orchestra. There's at least
Uh-huh.
one other serious pencil nerd in the orchestra, and I'll keep it a secret for now. But if I hear that you're going to interview this person, then I'll let you in on that, and you can surprise them with the question about it.
I like it. Okay, I just wrote down the name because I am interested. Conductors also, we are generally pretty particular about pencils.
Yeah,
So I'll check them out. So thank you for that.
sure.
Okay, it is now time to reveal your lie. And before we do that, uh, would you mind reading them out loud again while people take a vote? Because some people
Okay.
have not voted. So if you're watching right now, there are three statements on the screen. One of them is a lie. Vote for the lie in the comments.
Okay. So A is I have met two presidents of the United States. B is I have ridden my bike over 100 miles in one ride. And C is my first choice of musical instrument was the trumpet.
Okay, so let's see. So far in this interview, we have a bit of a clue about one of them, but we don't really know about the distance. Um, hmm. I'm trying to make up my mind also as to which one I think is the lie. So let's go ahead and let's reveal one of the truths.
Okay. Um, my first choice of musical instrument was, in fact, the trumpet.
Yes. Okay. So when was this, and what happened?
Well, this was in the fourth grade. So I started in public school music program. And at that point, I think they still start in fourth grade, which is really great. Um, they were, the people came to the school and they said, okay, here's what it is that you would do. So just come up and let us know what you'd want to play, and we can kind of organize you into the band and orchestra class or choir or whatever. And I was like, I want to play trumpet. And they said, well, you'll have to wait till fifth grade
Mm,
because you have to have all your permanent teeth and everything. And
mm,
usually band starts a year later than strings. And I kind of didn't want to wait. And I was like, well, I got to think about it. And so I went home, and my mom was like, well, your brother studied the violin, and we still have that violin from like 20 years ago. So we don't have to rent or buy one. So you're going to start on the violin, which was fine. So I got to start doing something right away. And,
yeah, yeah.
it was great for our family that we just already had a violin in the family. So that's how that happened.
And there was
But
no turning
otherwise,
back.
look out, Jeff Work. I'd be coming after you. I'm so not a trumpet player in personality, though.
That's funny.
Man,
I mean,
Bill is perfect.
did you ever like pick one up? Like, did you ever?
No,
Okay.
I never have. I've tried like the flute and the clarinet, just like you get together with friends and you're like, hey, can I try to make a sound on that?
It's so
But
hard.
I've never tried. I've tried trombone, but not trumpet.
They're all so hard.
Yeah,
Yeah. Huge respect for brass players out there.
for sure. And
It's so
every
hard.
mistake is like incredibly audible.
I know.
So,
Okay, so that's one of your truths. So let me get that
yes.
off the screen. That was C. So, okay, that leaves two statements. So let's go ahead and reveal your second truth.
My second truth is that I have ridden my bike over 100 miles in one time. In fact,
Nice.
it was 103.5 miles. I did a Grand Fondo out in Hood River, I think in 2011.
And how long does that take?
That took about 8 hours, like from start to finish, but it was probably about 6.5 hours of riding time. But you have places where you can take a break, and they have
Right.
places where you can eat or whatever you need to do. And yeah, that was brutal.
I
And there
cannot
was
imagine.
the worst part of that. There was a climb that was 3,300 feet of elevation gain, and it was something like 10 miles long or something like that. So it was just this grind, and it was in the second half of the ride. So you're
Oof.
already tired anyway. And yeah, it was not. I should not have done that as my first century ride. That was not smart.
Have you done other long distance rides like that? Or?
Not quite as long. I've done the 80-mile version of the Portland Century, and I did the pedal pedal, which is down in at the Oregon Garden, and that one I did a 50 miler. That's more my speed. That I can get done, and I actually feel like I'm still can live at the end of it. 100 miles is just it's
Wow.
brutal. I mean, it's running a marathon on a bike.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
equivalent.
That's amazing.
It's
Um,
ridiculous.
well, have you met any US presidents?
No, and I'm really sad. I remember when I was at University of Puget Sound, I had some friends that played in kind of the big string quartet in the music school, and they got to go up to Seattle and play at a reception that uh, George Bush 43 was at.
Okay, okay.
And they talked about meeting him, and they got their picture with him, and I was like, oh man, that would be so cool. And then I played when I was at University of Maryland. I played a few gigs where I played in the Senate office building, and I saw some senators and stuff, but never got to see a president live in
Okay.
person. And oh man, I wish, gosh, that would be so great.
Yeah,
There's something about that. And I've had some friends that have played for Obama, and I don't know.
yeah.
It's just that's like really high up on my bucket list. That if I could do something like that, that would be amazing. Because
Nice.
I think whatever your opinions, the office of the president is amazing,
Right,
and
right.
our it's like the leader of our country, and this great history, going back hundreds of years. And it's just like, wow, just to be in the same room with somebody like that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think that, the fact that your statement says two, I have met two presidents, it made it more specific. So
Yeah,
I think that made people fall for it. So good for you. And
I did word that very carefully. I'm tricky like that.
and I'm kind of looking through the comments, and I see a bunch of C's. People didn't believe that you play the trumpet. I see. Yeah, I think I see a bit of everything, but I think I see mostly C's. I see a few A's too. So cool. Okay. Uh, Charles, let's move on to our final segment here, which we
Okay.
call the plug, and that's where you get to
Yes.
plug anything you want to plug. So what do you have coming up?
So tomorrow, Wednesday, April 1st, April Fool's Day, I'm playing a live stream little mini recital on Artslandia's Facebook Live page. And it's at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time.
Okay.
And it'll be a little under an hour, I think, but I'll just basically chat and play some. I'm going to be playing some Bach and the Vieuxtemps that you just heard me do, and a little bit of Rager. and and then it's as a benefit to try to raise just a little bit of money for the Oregon Symphony, kind of help us continue our work. And it should be fun. So I watched one that Diane Chaplin played, which was really wonderful. This amazing cellist that's in town, and I think right after I happened to watch that, they contacted me and said, "Would you be interested in doing this?" And I thought, this sounds really scary, but what the heck? I might as well do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been watching some of those actually because they happen to come on right after this show, right? So as I'm like wrapping things up, I tuned to that. So there you have it, everybody. Tomorrow, April 1st, April Fool's Day, Wednesday, 5 p.m. So people just go to the Artslandia Facebook page. That's a
Yep,
way
and
to
they'll
get
be
there.
streaming it live there.
Awesome. All right, so you're gonna be live 2 days in a row. Hard work. Charles, it was so fun to talk to you. Thank you so very much. And folks, if you're watching, if you have questions for Charles, put them in the comments. I'll make sure to send them his way, and we'll get back to you because we gotta wrap up now. It was such a pleasure to have you, Charles. Thank you so much for sharing your music with us. Thank you for all that you're doing, also to bring attention to issues that are important right now in the arts community. And I personally look forward to seeing you soon in person and on stage.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been so fun.
All right. Thank you, Charles. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, everybody. You see, it's just every time I talk to somebody on this show, I just feel so lucky that I know so many amazing people. And if you, like me, live in Portland, Oregon, I mean, you will get to see all of these people on stage, hopefully soon. But for now, you can see them live online. So go to the Artslandia Facebook page tomorrow at 5 and check out Charles' happy hour performance. We have amazing guests for the rest of this week and for the following week too. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking with Michelle Merrill. Michelle is an amazing conductor. I met her years ago at a conducting workshop that we happened to be doing together. And I've been following her career since then, and she's fantastic. I'm very excited to talk to her tomorrow at 4. Then Thursday, Christopher Brown from Portland, Oregon, amazing jazz. He does it all. He's an amazing jazz player, educator. He's also a public speaker. He's an actor. I very much look forward for him to share with all of you MYS students and our community all of the cool things he's doing. Friday, Maria Garcia, one of the most spectacular collaborative pianists I've ever known, ever. I mean, and also, I mean, she's just an extraordinary pianist, and she's so nice. So I'm very excited to talk to her about many things, but among them, do's and don'ts for young musicians when they work with collaborative pianists. Okay, and then next week is kicked off by Nancy Ives, Principal Cello Oregon Symphony, and I cannot wait to share the rest of next week's lineup with all of you. So thank you for watching. That's all the time we have. We're about 2 minutes late. I love doing this so much, and I love being in touch with all of you. I miss you, MYS students, and I cannot wait for all of us to congregate to make music together again. But in the meantime, we have things like this. So I'm very thankful that you have been watching, and join me again tomorrow at 4 p.m. And afterwards, tomorrow, go listen to Charles on the Artslandia Facebook page. Okay? Thank you, everybody. I will see you tomorrow.